Minister.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker, and I'd like to thank all those who have spoken in debate today. I'd particularly like to congratulate the Right Honourable Gentleman for the North Cotswolds for obtaining the debate, I think very properly in Armed Forces Week, to highlight some of the issues that he has done. And can I say that I'd like to try and answer a few of his questions in some of the time that I have. I've had an interesting read of his committee's 32nd report. Indeed, he and I used to serve on the committee many moons ago, and so I take PAC reports very seriously. And I'd like to address some of the points that he raised. First of all, although it's true that there has been no equipment plan for the last 2 years, during which both governments have been in power actually during that time, because of some of the disruption that there has been with the election, then with the wholesale reordering of the way in which MOD works, I recognise the fact that his committee is unsatisfied with the current state of affairs. I agree with him, it can't stay how it is. Ministers are committed to increasing transparency. I undertake to work closely with the NAO and with his committee to try and work out an arrangement going forward that he and his committee will be happy with. Because ministers are committed to increasing transparency, and we're not seeking to undercut transparency or fail to report properly to Parliament. So I hope that will give him some reassurance. We, of course, only just received his report. I think we've got a couple of months to make sure we reply to its recommendations properly. I will take an interest in making sure that we do so properly. I did recognise some of the figures that he was mentioning in his excellent speech, and he asked the question, and one or two others with varying levels of outrage have asked a similar question: where's all the money coming from? Well, what I can say is we've already committed in this Parliament. There's been an extra £5 billion this year. We've committed in this Parliament resources to get up to 2.5% in the core defence budget, over £10.9 billion extra in real terms. And I don't think any of the defence ministers have turned up at NATO today with a fully set out plan for getting by 2035 to the 5%. And each country has its own ways of doing its budget and the period going forward for which it will do that. And I think it's quite reasonable for us to say we had a manifesto commitment during the election to get to 2.5%. We have set out how we're going to do it. We have said that we will do it. We've said how we'll pay for it. I know that the Honourable Gentleman for Shirley, sorry, I've forgotten the name. You can see Solihull West did say that he regretted the way in which it's being paid for, and made his points in his speech, in his remarks. But we have made that choice, difficult though it is, to make it clear where the money that we've committed to in this Parliament is coming from. We've always met our NATO commitments, and that goes for parties on both sides of the House at the moment. When they were in government, they met our NATO commitments. We have always met our NATO commitments, and we will continue to do so. The way it's going to be funded in the next Parliament will, of course, be set out ahead of that, during that Parliament, ahead of that Parliament starting. We can't say we can't set the path directly from this Parliament into the next Parliament, but NATO will be looking at that. We don't budget for that length of time going ahead. Neither did his party when it was in office. It's not how we do budgeting in this Parliament, and it's not how his government budgeted either. But NATO, I mean, the Honourable Gentleman's only just walked in. If he wants to start heckling me, I'm happy to have a discussion with him in the tea room afterwards. But you know, there's no point in heckling me from a sedentary position when he's not taking part in the debate. We will set out. No. It's very kind of the honourable gentleman to allow me to continue my speech. I'm trying to answer the chairman of the Select Committee, whose debate this is. We know that NATO will, as it usually does, check each of the nation's spending against its expectations on a yearly basis. And so that will be a very obvious way in which we can see progress being made towards that goal. But we'll continue to report as ever. And I have no doubt that we'll get to 3% in the next Parliament, and there will be a trajectory to 3 to 5% overall with the 1.5% security and resilience spending. And I think instead of making allegations about it being smoke and mirrors, it would be better if the opposition would just say that they would do the same if they were in government, and then we can have a proper consensus to give certainty to industry that that is in fact what we are all committed to do as a nation. And I welcome the fact that the Liberal Democrats said that they would commit themselves to that from their position. I look forward to engaging with the Chairman of the Select Committee in respect of his recommendations of the report, and I intend to make sure that he's satisfied by what we come back with. He made some particular requests about Ajax. That we all know that notorious name, but he asked when the 180 vehicles would be delivered. The initial operating capability of Ajax will be December 2025. I'm hoping it might be sooner, but that is the commitment that's on track as far as I am aware, and that there will be at least 180 vehicles delivered by that time. Morpheus has been and the Land Environment Tactical Communications and Information Programme system has been a troubled programme from some of it, but it's a £6.5 billion programme. It's a 10-year programme. It's lots of different things all fitting together, as the honourable gentleman will recall, and so we are trying to make sure that it delivers what it's supposed to deliver. But some of these programmes that we have inherited do have troubled histories. It's one of the reasons why we are committed to defence reform. I mean, one of the problems with our procurement and acquisition system, and again it was mentioned in the debate and by those who have perhaps experienced it in their professional lives, either in the forces or in the department, one of the issues has been that the system isn't fit for purpose for doing things quickly and for delivering what it says it will deliver. One of the purposes of the defence reform agenda isn't just to reorganise things for the sake of it, because that's not what we ought to be doing. If the system were in perfect order, we wouldn't be reforming it. But one of the reasons to have a direct National Armaments Director who is accountable to ministers and to the services for delivering the equipment that they need in a timely fashion is because currently that isn't what happens. Currently each service goes off on frolics of their own with their equipment budgets, their top-level budgets, what they want. They never really talk to each other across services. And as the honourable gentleman said in his remarks, things get started off because people think that they want them. It's a 10-year programme, they're not funded right to the end. Money gets wasted. We've got to do better. One of the ways in which we will do that is by having much clearer accountability. The NAD is a tremendously important figure in that. And also by making sure that we shorten our acquisition timescales. We can't just have CADMID for everything, pre-contract phases. We can't do it any longer. We're not in times when we can get away with taking 10 years to produce something that isn't quite what we wanted in the first place. There's been too much of that in the past. So that is why we are segmenting our acquisition budget. That is why the NAD will be in charge of delivering for all of our services the capabilities that they need in much shorter timescales. If we're talking about drones, if we're talking about that kind of capability, we're trying to get to contract within 3 months. on that kind of capability. Standing up UK defence innovation with ring-fenced budget, 400 million this year, 10% of our invest budget in future, will aim to ensure that there is money behind making sure we can innovate fast to get lethality into the hands of our warfighters faster. That is an essential thing that we have to do. We also need to make sure, even with nuclear submarines, that we try and shorten the timescale it takes to get there. And we will have seen in the SDR this aspiration to get the time to contract down from on average 6 years with those kinds of things down to 2 years. That's a challenging aim, but it's something that we want to do. We also need to make sure that with spiral upgrades, with things like new radars that we're putting into our existing capabilities, we get those timescales to contract down to a year so that we can have a much faster pace of innovation, of change, of improvement. The NAD is going to be responsible for that. There will be direct lines of accountability. There will be direct budget lines for which he can be accountable. And we just have to make sure that the culture change to empower those at a lower level happens so that we don't just slip back into the old way of doing things. I know that that's a challenge. It's a challenge that we need to meet because of the times that we're in. Yes, he's going to ask me about the new medium helicopter. I'll give way to him. Let him ask his question first.
Well, I think the Minister must be a mind reader. But on that point, will the Minister give us a timescale when the new medium lift helicopter will be awarded? And hopefully it'll be awarded to Leonardo in my constituency.
I'm not making any announcements today, Madam Deputy Speaker, but I've heard what he says, and I want these matters dealt with more swiftly than they have been dealt with in the past. So he needs to just listen out in due course at some time in the future. But I've heard what he said. We need to make sure that the defence reform we're doing is to make a real difference to the way we do acquisition, to make a real improvement in our procurement, to stop wasting money, to get things into the hands of our warfighters faster. Because we can argue, as the Honourable Gentleman likes to do, about money. But I know, in my job, we have to do better with the money that we get. Because the money that is being allocated to defence could be spent on other things. It could be spent on hospitals. It could be spent on schools. It could be spent supporting people in their needs at home. And yet we're spending it on defence. Now, we all accept that we need to do that. We have to be able to show to our public, to the voters, that the way in which we spend this money gets us the maximum value for it. I know that the Right Honourable Gentleman's Committee will help us make sure that we do that. I am determined to make sure that we do as a government, and that is what defence reform is. I will give way on that point.
Very kind, because she mentioned money, and it's brilliant that she's engaging in that debate. So I said in my speech about the 2.6% issue. Now, this is really important because the pledge is 2.6% by 2027. In written answers, we are not being told what is the quantum of money that is being added into the MOD budget that is not currently in it, i.e. the intelligence spend and the Foreign Office items outside of Chagos. Can she tell us what that quantum is so we can know whether they really are going to be spending 2.5 on the core defence budget?
The Honourable Gentleman had a very cynical part to the beginning of his speech, I must say. I understand the point that he makes. I haven't seen the answers that he's referring to, so I'd have to go away, and I'm happy to discuss it with him on another occasion. But I can't give him an answer today about what those figures are. Yes, I will give way to the...
I deliberately put a little bit in my speech about recruitment and retention. And there will be a tension, I think, between the Armaments Director and the Chief of the Defence Staff over recruitment versus budget for equipment. Mm-hmm. You can't suddenly turn on the tap and recruit more people. It takes time. So will the Minister today say anything about when she's going to start to really increase and ramp up that recruitment?
Going on, led by my honourable friend, the Minister for Veterans and the Minister for Armed Forces, in fact, are leading a number of efforts to try and improve our recruitment and retention. As the House will know, with a flow and stop kind of situation, it takes time to turn around a long-standing trend, and unfortunately the previous government did not meet the recruitment targets for the armed forces in any one of its 14 years. So this is like a supertanker that needs to be turned around. We've already made some reforms to try and speed up the time it takes a young person who wants to join the forces, the time it takes to get them in. And that will start to show results in due course, but we are very conscious of trying to do that. I'm conscious of the fact that I'm probably overusing my time, and so I don't really want to give away any more. But just apologies, I apologise, but there is another debate to come. I just want to end by saying we are all essentially in the same place in this House in understanding that the importance of boosting our defence spending in a way that is effective, where we get good value for money, where we can boost our armed forces' capacity to defend this nation, where we can ensure that we deter potential adversaries. I think we're all on the same page in respect of that, and that's, I think, a good place for me to finish my speech. But I'd like to thank all members for taking part.
With leave of the House, I call Sir Geoffrey Clifton-Brown.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Chief. Very briefly, may I firstly thank the Minister for that positive contribution. Who would have thought 25 years ago when we sat next to each other in the public accounts, passing each other notes, holding the relevant civil service to account, that we would be in our respective positions now. But there we are. I thank my honourable friend from the front bench for his contribution. In fact, I thank all members for what I think has been a very positive debate. And now we're looking forward to seeing positive results from all those requests in the debate, and we will look forward to working with this government, but holding them severely to account for all the things that they've promised. Madam Deputy Speaker, thank you.
Order, order. The question necessary to dispose of the motion stands over until 7 o'clock under Standing Order number 54. We now come to the motion